Hey, hello, Cherie here, the host and producer of Women's Running Stories. And before we get going, I just want to acknowledge that women need pockets, especially us women who run. And that is exactly why Oiselle designed the pocket jogger tights and shorts. They have 7 pockets total, including a rear zip pocket, 2 large side pockets, and mesh pockets at the waist, so you can bring everything you need with you on every run. The fabric is soft and compressive enough, but not too compressive. And like all Oiselle products, they just look nice. And these pieces last forever. And I know firsthand because I have several pairs of the shorts and I have the tights in various lengths, and they really are just fantastic. I even wear them out in my day-to-day life when I'm not running. So check out the pocket jogger tights and shorts at oiselle.com. That is OISELLE.com. The apparel company created by women, for women, and rooted in running. Again, that's oiselle.com. You are listening to Women's Running Stories, and this is a race report about the 2024 Olympic Trials Marathon, and the athlete who will be featured to talk about how it all went down is top 10 finisher Emily Durgin.
Hi, my name is Emily Durgin, and I am a professional distance runner for Adidas. I live out in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Yes, this episode does feature Emily Durgin's story of how everything played out for her at arguably the most anticipated U.S. marathon in the past 4 years, the 2024 USATF Olympic Trials Marathon, which took place on February 3rd in Orlando, Florida. But before we hear more from Emily, I do want to welcome you to Women's Running Stories, the podcast where exceptional women runners tell inspirational stories about their running experiences. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I am your host and producer, and this podcast is a proud member of the Evergreen Network of podcasts. This is, in fact, one of our race report episodes, and just like last year, I will be featuring a race report for each one of the USATF road circuit races, getting the inside scoop about how it all went down from one of the top 10 finishers. And because a race is never just about what happens on race day, you'll also get to know a little bit more about each of these runners and how the race figures into their larger running story. The first race of the season was the USATF Cross Country National Championships, and for that race report, I featured young professional runner Katie Camarena, telling the story of her terrific performance, and I will link to that in the show notes. A little bit more about this series, if you're not familiar with the running circuit, is that these races happen all throughout the United States all year long, and each race serves as a national championship for the distance or the type of race that is being run. Also, at each one of these races, runners earn cash prizes and they earn points based on where they finish. The points go to the series overall, which is determined at the end of the year. And this year, the series will finish off once again in November at the 5K National Championships, which will happen in New York City as part of the New York City Marathon weekend of events. Now, back to the Olympic Trials Marathon. Of course, this race stands alone in the race circuit in one huge way. In addition to being able to earn your stars and stripes, as well as cash prizes and series points, athletes have a chance to become members of the team that will represent the U.S. at the Olympics. And the rules for this are really simple. The top 3 across the line are automatic selections for the Olympic team, and 4th place is the alternate. And every single woman who was lining up for the trials was an elite-level distance runner. In order to qualify for the Olympic trials, each runner had to have run either a 3:37 marathon or faster, or a 1:12 half marathon or faster. So, the 149 women who lined up in Florida were the best of the best in the United States, and everyone was bringing their A game, including Emily Durgin. Emily is relatively new to the marathon, but it was clear that she was a runner to watch going into the trials. In the half marathon distance, she had clocked a stunning 1 hour, 7 minute, 54-second finish at the 2022 Houston Half Marathon. Her first go at the marathon, however, was not quite as spectacular. She lined up for the 2022 New York City Marathon, and she did not finish. Her second go, however, was a totally different story. She clocked a terrific 2 hour, 26-minute time at the 2023 Toronto Waterfront Marathon. In addition, Durgin has valuable experience racing at these national events, and she has been on the podium many times. Said another way, she knows her competition and she knows how to race, and she isn't afraid to put herself in the mix. It's also worth noting that in the marathon, there are often surprises. So while experience and past results are indicators of who might come out on top, there is no way to predict how the race will shake out on the day. This race showed that very clearly. And this is why there were many women lining up who knew they had a legitimate shot at becoming an Olympian. Because you never know what will happen. No matter how many times you've done it before, 26.2 miles is always a long way to go. A few quick notes before we dive in. The Orlando, Florida course was a loop course. It featured one 2.2-mile loop to start things off, followed by 3 8-mile loops. And Emily mentions several runners by first name, so I'm just going to quickly clarify who she's talking about. Jessa is Jessa Hansen, who is an up-and-coming young professional runner and was making her marathon debut at the trials. Sarah and Betsy are Sarah Hall and Betsy Sena, both of whom are experienced professional marathoners who were high on many people's lists of potential Olympians. Also mentioned was Alafine, who is Alafine Tiliamuk, winner of the 2020 Olympic Trials Marathon, who unfortunately came into this race with an injury. There's also Carolyn, who is Carolyn Rotich, another seasoned pro and past winner of the Boston Marathon. And finally, she mentions Fiona, who is Fiona O'Keefe, and Dakota, who's Dakota Lindworm. And I'll talk a little bit more about those two runners toward the end of the episode. All right, now let's get to it. Let's hear how the 2024 Olympic Trials Marathon played out for top professional runner Emily Durgin. Here to tell the story is Emily.
Yeah. So this was actually my first ever marathon Olympic trials. So kind of not really sure what to expect. I had done the track trials back in 2021, and the track is very intense. I've always felt this way since college. You know, in the holding room, everyone's very quiet. No one's joking around. It's just like a much more serious vibe than the road racing community. And I've had a lot of competitors actually agree with me on this. So it was funny. It was like the night before in the hotel, kind of when we all got settled there. Steph Bruce came and sat down the same table I was at. And of course, she's been to multiple Olympic trials. And she asked me, she said, is this what you expected the trials to be like? And I was like, honestly, no, it's a lot more laid back and relaxed than I expected. So my only other experience with a marathon, so I had New York, so that was my one major, and that was, the majors are very intense. There's a lot going on. Everyone is doing interviews and all kinds of stuff. Whereas the trials is, it's more, everyone there is being treated the same. So there's no big names that are getting interviewed and all this, and there's no appearance fees. So it's more just like all 150 athletes that qualified for the race are all treated the same, which I thought was really cool. And it took a lot of pressure off. So the night before we had the technical meeting and then the dinner. So again, just super low key, and then went back to my room. And obviously the night before any race, it doesn't matter if it's like a local town 5K or the Olympic trials, I never sleep very well, just, excited energy. So yeah, but I was extremely confident going into this race. I had a great build. I felt like I was very prepared, and the goal was to put myself in the race. And again, this was only going to be my second marathon. This It was my third marathon build, technically including New York. But yeah, I still felt, even with it only being my second marathon, I was confident that I could race with the front group.
All right, so I want to jump in here because this element of confidence is such a key factor when it comes to racing, and especially racing in events where there is so much on the line. And this confidence, it was something that had struck me about Emily Durgin because she does know how to come to the line with rock solid certainty in her abilities. So I wanted to know more about how she had cultivated this because this is not a skill that just happens. And in fact, it's something Emily has worked on, especially because she did not enter the professional ranks coming off of a stellar collegiate career. She was not a shining star in the NCAA championship events like many runners entering the professional field often are. Gaining confidence as a professional runner has taken some time. And a little note here, when Emily says that she moved out here, she means moving to Flagstaff, Arizona, which is where a lot of top professional runners live and train.
Yeah, I think the biggest shift was probably when I moved out here in like 2019 to like 2020. I think that when I first was in college, coming out of college, I had never made it to NCAAs. I wasn't all American. I just would believe that because I didn't do those things, I wasn't as good as the people I was running against. And this is like a big thing that even now that I'm like almost 30, that like you'll see highlighted, oh, she never made NCAAs. Like there was actually one thing that came out. I got a shout out that like I was like someone to watch to make the team, and they did this for everyone. It was kind of funny. So it's like, oh, why will Emily make the team? Oh, she's very competitive on the road. She finishes top 3. Why won't she? Well, the reason I wouldn't make the team is because I never was like good in the NCAA. I'm like, that just is so, that's like unreal. It just, I don't know, like that did kind of bother me because that is how I used to think when I was younger. And that's why like I loved seeing Dakota make that team, because she was very similar to an athlete like me in college. And it goes to show these athletes that sometimes it takes time, to develop physically and also mentally. So yeah, I think that was kind of the biggest thing, was not being afraid to compete with these athletes that had done and achieved a lot of great things and had run a lot faster than me. And it just took like a few races of me putting myself like in the race that it just started to click mentally, instead of being like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have all run faster than you, so you should probably stay with like the second group. And that was like something that was like really bad to mentally like tell myself. Yeah, just took years of racing in these pro events and being comfortable, being up with the top women. And yeah, it wasn't like my first year out of college I was like, oh yeah, like I'm so cool running next to Sarah Hall. Like this is like I'm confident for this. Like no, no, no. It was definitely years and years of practice and work, and that I've slowly, gotten to this point that I'm like, okay, like you can compete with everyone in this race.
But confidence, just like physical training, is always a work in progress.
Yeah, and that's something that, it kind of ebbs and flows. In the sport, you have like an injury and then a setback in training, and then obviously you don't feel as fit. So like, oh, maybe your confidence isn't as high. So yeah, it's also, you have to be a little bit of like a realist. Like obviously, to an extent, like how your training is going, like how your energy levels are, how you're feeling, like that does help with the mindset, like, so that is one thing. It's not like you do have to put in the work and feel good to like also have that like self belief. So yeah, I think it comes together. It's not just, you can't just be like, oh, I am gonna make the Olympic team, but then okay, but you haven't trained for 6 weeks. Like, so I think that yeah, you gotta, it's a little bit of both. I think the confidence does come from believing in what you're doing, and that doesn't mean that you're crushing crazy workouts and all that. It just means that like you are very confident in the training that you are doing. Because there also has been times in my life that, maybe I was training exactly how I am now, no faster, no more, but I wasn't confident in it. So then the results didn't show.
Right. There is a big difference between training and racing. You can be the most fit, best trained athlete on the line, but then you also have to execute the race well on the day. And that takes a strong mental game, which in Emily's case isn't just a result of race experience. She's worked at this part of her preparation very directly.
I have worked with, like I have talked with sports psychologists and just, different therapists in general over the years, honestly, since I've been in high school. So, there are, or even coaches, past peers. So there's just little things that I've taken from a variety of different sources, and they're kind of just in my mental bank that I use probably, subconsciously leading into these types of races. But something that I do like to do is visualize the race, and I think a lot of athletes do this. But like visualize the race, visualize like how you're gonna feel, and visualize yourself like coming into that finish line. Yeah, so that was kind of quite emotional because when I was going into that finish line, I remember thinking like, this is not what we visualized, but we're here. We're here. So yeah.
Yeah, in just a minute here, you'll hear all about how Emily's race finish didn't quite go the way she'd envisioned it. But whatever the outcome, going into the race with this unshakable confidence was key to Emily giving herself the best chance of having a great day. And one central piece of that confidence is perhaps the most challenging to foster, and that is belief.
It's kind of this like wild thing that my coach and I have also talked about. It's kind of like you have to be the one that believes that you're capable of it. As much as people tell you until they're blue in the face, like, oh, you're going to be an Olympian, you can do great things. If you don't believe it yourself, then, you're never going to do it. So that's something that, I mean, I don't, maybe sports psychologists won't agree with me there, but I do personally believe you either have it or you don't. And fortunately enough, I just do think I am an athlete that has it. Sometimes it does go away and I have to tap into it a little bit more. But with that being said, I just think that yeah, New York was a little bit different. It was something I had never done before. I had everyone around me telling me how great I was going to be at the marathon, how this was my event, but I didn't, not that I didn't believe it yet, but I hadn't been able to see it through on my own. And I think I was just a little bit like emotionally exhausted. I had kind of gone away from excitement and it kind of turned into more of fear. And I think that can happen to a lot of athletes is when, yeah, when you're feeling fearful and you're worried of failure and all that, it's really hard to perform under those feelings. Whereas if you can turn it in your mind and make it like exciting and all that, then yeah, that's when you're going to perform your best. But going into New York, I was just doubt, fearful, all those things versus the trials. It was excitement and, what if, like all that. So I think that is the biggest difference with New York and then coming to the Olympic trials is I truly believed I was capable of being top 3 in the race. Yeah, it sounds simple, but it's like if you don't believe it, then it's never going to happen.
So, Emily Durgin showed up to Orlando, well trained, full of excited energy, confidence, and belief in her ability to throw down on race day. And after her fitful night of sleep, the big day had finally arrived.
We went down and got breakfast, and then I met my friend from Flagstaff, Jessa, in her room to do our little final. I think she had like some special like hair gel that I put in my ponytail. So did that, and then we went down and met my coach and got on the bus. And yeah, the whole vibe of the morning was very calm, very relaxed feeling. It's kind of wild because you're kind of looking around like, yeah, like so Jess Ton, she's from Arizona, and I had trained with her back like 4 years ago when she was up in Flagstaff, and I hadn't seen her forever. And I, on the start line, I was like, hey girl, like this is awesome that you're here. And just like little things like that, like Sarah Hall and Alphine, and just we have like this whole Flagstaff community. So it's just like I see these people every single day, and then we're all at the start line, and we kind of all know each other's been working hard. So yeah, I think it's just, but like I said, it was a very like calm energy, and at the start line they announced a few people, and the men had already taken off. So yeah, I think that that's something. I've kind of over the years watched certain athletes like a Des Linden or even like an Emma Bates. They if you watch like before like Chicago or Boston starts, they're sitting on the side of the road, just like, we're about to be on our feet for over 2 hours. So I've watched them over the past years do that. And so I actually like sat down when we were waiting for the men to start. And again, a lot of athletes also kind of sat down, just kind of trying to be as calm as possible, which is so wild because, like a road 10K or a track 5K, like you're like smacking your legs, doing high knees, trying to get like super amped. Whereas in a marathon, you're almost trying to start that first mile as relaxed and calm as possible. Yeah, so the gun goes off, and it was fast from the start. Kira D'Amato, within the first 800 meters, she went. I mean, our first mile wasn't. I would have to look, but it wasn't jogging. There's some trials where their first mile they'll run like a 6:30, and like I knew that this race was going to be fast because within the half mile, like we were moving, like we weren't running, like a easy run pace. And then it just kept getting quicker into mile 2, and yeah, and honestly, I don't even know. It was pretty quick on, probably within the first, because the first loop we did was almost 3 miles. Within the first 3 miles, I think we were already down to a group of like 10 to 15 women, which is pretty crazy because, some trials you'll have like, that's what I was kind of expecting one of two things. I was like, it's either going to go out really slow and we're going to have like 80 women there, or it's going to go out in a pace that 15 to 20 women will go after. And that's kind of what it ended up being. And honestly, that's kind of the type of race I was actually looking forward to, because I do have a lot of confidence in just running hard from the start. I like when it kind of separates quickly. And yeah, so that was really exciting to kind of be just like going early. And with that being said, I was trying to like conserve energy. I didn't want to be the one pushing the pace. And I kind of felt that there was enough people wanting to make it honest enough. So I was kind of just trying to, I don't know, my people have watched the race, and they say it almost looks like I was like mirroring like what Emily Sisson did. And that's because she's just an athlete that I've looked up to for so long, and I've raced her a ton. And I knew going into this race, like Emily was going to do everything she could to make the team. So I just thought, okay, well, if I can kind of do what Emily's doing, I think this will set me up well. So when Emily kind of like pulled back and went behind in the group, I would kind of follow her and go behind. And then there was a couple times that like we were kind of in the front. So yeah, it was kind of like that first 70-ish minutes of the race. It was just kind of like that. There was change in who was leading, change in who sat back. And I honestly felt confident and comfortable through that entire first half of the race. I've talked to some athletes that ended up having to drop out, and they said that they started to feel hot within, that like around mile 14. So that was, yeah, before we were even done the second loop. There was some athletes that were saying like they were already overheated. They knew their body was done, and they knew that, that was it. For me, I still felt very good through the two loops. So around mile 16, I was still feeling great. I think Fiona might have made like a big surge around like 18, and that kind of strung the group out. And then I'd say somewhere between like 19 and 20 is must have been where my body kind of hit that max temperature, because that's when in my mind I was like, okay, I think I can still maintain this effort. I knew Fiona had gone, I knew Emily Sisson had tried to go after her, and I was confident that those two would be gone. But then 3, 4, and 5, like I was running with, I think it was, we had Betsy, Sarah, and I at that point were together, and that was like almost mile 19. And in my mind, I thought, okay, it's just going to be the three of us. Like, don't pick it up too much. And maybe, we can, like, I could still get this. And then I could tell that all three of us were struggling and we were slowing down. And I heard people coming behind us. And I was like, oh shit, there's more people coming. And that is when, yeah, Dakota went by us, and Caroline. Yes. So Dakota and Caroline came by us. And that's when I knew, oh my, like I'm hurting. I know that they haven't picked it up. We're just like, I'm struggling. So yeah, right there, that was kind of a hard moment, because I knew now there was more people that I'd be fighting with for that third spot. And I could tell when Dakota went by that she was definitely feeling a lot better than me, Sarah, and Betsy, because I had run with the two of them. I knew that we kind of were all in that hurt locker in the moment. So yeah, so that was kind of around mile 2021. And then soon after, I saw Betsy walk over and lay in the grass. And I was like, that looks so nice, but okay. And then I was like, okay, so then I think at that point I was still in, I don't know, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I was still probably in like fifth or sixth place at that point. So I was like, all right, yeah, you're hurting, but you're still moving. You really haven't, I hadn't completely died. I'm like, I didn't feel like I needed to drop out. I was like, there's still, you don't know what's going to happen in front of you. Well, that shortly changed around mile like 23 is when I felt my body slowly shutting down. And then it was to the point where I was like, oh my goodness, am I gonna finish? Honestly, the last few miles, it was just seeing so many people that I knew lined on the streets from mile 23 to 25. It was like, oh gosh, and you could tell they all knew I was dying. So like Mary Kate, who works for the BAA Boston Marathon, she was, you look so great, Emily, keep going. And I probably saw her at like, oh, that probably was around like 24, and then like almost 25. I was sponsored by Under Armour previously, and so a bunch of like the old Under Armour employees, this one woman Hannah, who I used to work directly with, like she was screaming and yelling for me, and it was just like crazy, all this support. And then another half mile later was my coach's wife, and then my coach, and it was just, I honestly think if that crowd wasn't there, I don't know if I would have made it to the finish line. And the last, I don't even know, mile is when a lot of people passed me, because I think I stayed in like six for a while, but then yeah, I just slowly got caught by people. But at that point, it to me was like, okay, like you can get through this, like just finish the race. And then I saw my coach with about a mile to go, and that's when I could barely pick my legs up, and I was about to round the corner and have 800 to go, and I saw the finish line, and in my head I was like, if you try to move your legs any quicker, you're going to collapse. And it was just, I have never experienced anything like this in the world. But I was convincing myself. I was like, okay, 800 to go, 600 to go, because they had the markers every 200. You're just like, you can do this, like just one more minute. And I had a couple college friends that were there watching me, and they were extremely emotional seeing me finish, because they could just tell. And my one friend said it looked like I had like ankle weights just like strapped to my legs, and like every single muscle in my leg was like bulging out. And that's what I felt like. It just felt like I was just being like pulled down into the ground, and I couldn't lift my legs up anymore. And then it was literally meters from the finish line. My legs just like gave out, like completely gave out. And I was still with it. Like I could, it was a very weird experience because my mind and everything else was very clear, but my body was just shot. It was the wildest experience. So my legs gave out and I could see the finish line and I was able to get up and I was able to finish the race, and then yeah, collapsed into a wheelchair and was dunked in ice baths and felt a lot better relatively quick once I got my core temperature down and electrolytes. But like I said, I'm super happy that I was able to work through those last few miles because I think that's something that's only going to help me in the future. And it's this kind of like weird feeling that you can't quite explain to people, but I think going through it is only going to make me stronger the next time around.
Yes, after an unexpected approach to the finish line that found Emily on her hands and knees for a few moments just meters from the line, she did get up and complete her first Olympic Trials Marathon in a time of 2:27:56 to take ninth place. Places and times aside, however, Emily is coming away from this experience with one clear certainty.
In this race, I truly don't believe I could have done anything different to give it my all. You know, you could say, "Oh, I could have gone out slower and then maybe picked people off." Well, yeah, but who's to say that my result would have been any different? You know, I went into this race saying, "I want to make top 3, and the way that I'm going to race this race to give me my best shot is I am going to run with the lead group. I think I'm capable of it. I'm in shape to run around 222. I think that's what it's going to take to make the team. And, you know, if anyone outruns me on this day, then good on them." And I just think that that's what happened, but it's not for lack of trying. And honestly, another thing that I also like noted going into this trials, that I was like, goals top 3, I want to be top 3. But at the end of the day, you know, it's not going to make or break the rest of my year, the rest of my career. Only 3 women get to go to the Olympics in the marathon, and then there's 150 plus other women that, you know, they are going to go on and keep living their lives and go after new goals. So I think that was also something that, not that it took pressure off, but it also made in my mind, it was like, okay, this isn't the end. This isn't the end. You know, we're going to run this race, and then it's either going to be, there's going to be 2 different outcomes. So I think that that's also important to do as an athlete, because it can be really scary to be in a race. And when you kind of feel that number one goal slip away, to keep going through when you haven't set second, third, fourth level goals.
With the trials behind her, Emily is moving on to her next goals. And after a post marathon break, she's eager to get back to it, and she and her coach have some specific work to focus on.
So we think, and I think it's, you know, no surprise that my style of running, my form is very kind of like quote loud in a way. It's just kind of my running form. I just kind of, if you look at me versus some of the other runners, I just like, I have like a lot of like motion. Like I'm just like, it looks like I'm working harder than other people. And I think that that could be true. It's not that I can't, it's like obviously I can, my body can do it, but we're thinking if I can be more efficient in my form, it will help conserve some of that energy that will, so I won't run out of gas those last bit of miles. So yeah, we're going to work on some little things like some core strength and just kind of working on, my coach explains it as like the neck to the waist, because I'm super powerful, like the waist down, like all of that, like I have no problem with, but it's kind of like getting that middle ground. And I think if you've read a lot of running coaches are getting really obsessed over this, having like a really strong stable core is what's going to keep you efficient, and yeah, that's what's going to balance out the whole body. So that's what we're going to work on. And Yeah, I'm kind of excited about it because it will give us something different than just like, oh, we need to run more miles or run faster workouts. Like, no, that's all there. Now it's just this like nitty gritty little 1%. Where can we get that? And as for what I'm looking forward to next, yeah, I think as soon as one finishes a marathon, your mind is like all over the place. So I think I had like 7 different plans that I like texted my coach like within like my week vacation of what I wanted to do. And he's like, okay, let's just like let you think for a good 10 days and then we can get excited for the future. So I am excited to run another marathon. And I think I not I think I know that I would really love to compete for the US, and my next chance to do that would be to make the world team for Tokyo next year. So I'd love to run a fast course and try to get a fast marathon time this fall. So now until then, we are going to shift and we're going to do some shorter races. And I love all the road racing communities. So, yeah, that's kind of the plan. We're going to go race some road stuff. We're going to work on form. We're going to work on getting faster over the 10K and the 5K, which will be a nice change because I was actually I ran with my friend Jess on Flagstaff this morning, and we all were just so emotionally drained from this trials experience. You know, it's something that you're thinking about for 4 years, and then the last, I don't know, from fall through like the holidays, and then it's just like really emotionally draining. So it feels very nice to just kind of put that in the past right now and focus on something different.
And that does bring us to the end of Emily Durgin's race report for the 2024 Olympic Trials Marathon. I want to thank Emily so much for coming on the podcast and sharing her story. What an exciting racer. I am really excited to see what comes next for Emily Durgin. And of course, I will link to how you can follow her in the show notes, and you can keep up with her running life as well. I'll also point out here that in addition to posting about her running and racing, Emily posts pictures of her dog Winston, who is super adorable. He also got to travel with her to the Olympic trials. Oh, he is so cute. And of course, I do want to congratulate the top 3 finishers at the trials. The women who will be going to the 2024 Paris Olympics for Team USA are race winner Fiona O'Keefe, second place finisher Emily Sisson, and third place finisher Dakota Lindworm. Coming in fourth was Jessica Ton McLean, and she will be the alternate in the event that Fiona, Emily, or Dakota cannot race. This finish, like many finishes in the past, was full of surprises. Just a few notes about this. This was Fiona's first marathon. She'd qualified with a half marathon time of 1:09:34, and that was the fastest half marathon qualifying time coming into the trials. I'm going to point out here that Emily Durgin's half marathon PR was over a full minute faster than that. So it really is an unpredictable race, and Fiona had a stellar day. Not only did she win the race soloing to the finish, but she set an Olympic Trials Marathon record. Huge congratulations to her. It was an epic performance. Coming in second was Emily Sisson, who, as the current American record holder in the half marathon and the marathon, was an undeniable favorite in the race. But then again, Lindworm was not. By time, she was the 10th fastest marathon runner coming in, but she is a gritty racer and she knows how to race the marathon, and she had a terrific day. Alternate Jess Ton McLean was, for many people, perhaps the biggest surprise of all. She had been ranked 28th coming into the race, and she clocked a PR of over 3 minutes on a day when many runners struggled, predictably because of the heat and certainly because of the pressure. And this is why marathons are so exciting. You really never know how they will unfold. And that does bring me to the end of this race report. The next race on the road circuit calendar is the 15K Champs, coming up fast here on March 2nd. A race report for that event will drop a week or two after the race, so please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss it. I want to thank you for listening. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I am your host and producer. And until next Friday, I do wish you healthy, joyful, confident strides forward. Women's running. Women's running stories.
Hear Her Sports is a podcast for everyone who loves stories by and about women striving to improve and make a difference in their lives. I am your host, Elizabeth Emery, a former professional cyclist. In every episode, I introduce a female athlete or woman in the business of sport through a thoughtful conversation about who they are and the terrific work they're doing. My guests and I explore the glorious and frustrating issues in sports, history, equity, training, nutrition, and so much more. Join us for inspiration, for community, and for love of being a strong, athletic woman.